favored. You are a mighty warrior.
Televangelism is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and some of its biggest names are constantly making headlines for the wrong reasons. But none of them bounce back from the hits to their reputation quite like Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen, the smiling preacher, preaches prosperity, but with the constant controversy surrounding him, things aren't looking so good, leaving just one question on everyone's mind. What could he be hiding behind that perfect smile? On November 10th, 2021, a plumber named Justin Cawley is inside a bathroom at Lakewood Church wrestling with a loose toilet. He pries off a loose tile, expecting to find mold, rusty pipes, or maybe just drywall, but instead, he is met with roughly 500 envelopes containing a massive hidden secret tumbling out of the wall.
There was a loose toilet in the wall, and we removed the tile. Well, they removed the tile. Went to go remove the toilet, and I moved some insulation away, and about 500 envelopes fell out of the wall.
And what he did next changed the way the world saw Pastor Osteen. But before we get into the details of how the money got there, let's first look at the man at the pulpit. And Joel Osteen isn't just a pastor, he is a walking, talking, and cleanly dressed brand. The unlikely heir. In American media, Joel Osteen is the Teflon pastor because despite controversy, scandals, and criticism, his reputation remains undamaged. For decades, he has preached what is called the prosperity gospel. So whenever he has a scandal, he just flashes his blindingly white smile, says a few uplifting words, and the controversy dies down. Recently, however, the smile has started to crack. But to understand how Joel Osteen became the powerhouse televangelist he is today, you have to realize one shocking truth. He was never supposed to be the preacher. If you turned the clock to 1982 and walked into Lakewood Church back then, you wouldn't find Joel on stage, you'd find him behind a camera. For 17 years, Joel Osteen worked under his father, Joel Osteen, the founder of Lakewood, a traditional preacher with a seminary degree and a booming voice. Joel spent his days editing his father's sermons and handled everything that had to do with the camera. He was terrified of public speaking and felt safe in the production room, so every time his father asked him to preach, Joel said no. But for Joel to become the TV ministry titan he is today, this was going to change. On January 17th, 1999, Joel finally agreed to preach one sermon, and 6 days later, Joel Osteen died from a heart attack. With his father gone, Joel was forced to fill his shoes, taking the stage only out of necessity. He was grieving, inexperienced, and painfully unqualified. Most megapastors spend decades in seminary, studying to show themselves approved. But Joel Osteen dropped out of Oral Roberts University in his first year. So when Joel took the mic, he didn't try to be a scholar like his dad. Instead, he did what he knew. He treated the church service like a TV show. He simplified the message, removing the boring parts about sin and suffering. He focused on lighting, camera angles, and messages that made the audience feel good. Critics mocked him, calling his message gospel light and saying he wouldn't last long, but they underestimated Joel. He wasn't trying to save souls in the traditional sense, he was trying to build an audience. He didn't know how to preach a sermon, but he knew exactly how to sell one, and within a few years, the 6,000-seat church his father built was too small. So, in 2003, Joel made the boldest move in modern religious history. Lakewood signed a lease of $12 million for the Compact Center over 30 years and spent nearly $100 million on renovations, turning it into a world-class broadcast center. It took Lakewood from being a local congregation to becoming a global media empire. But you don't spend $100 million on a building unless you are absolutely certain you can fill every single seat every single week. You can't fill a sports arena with lectures about guilt, shame, and hellfire. Nobody wants to hear that. And Joel knew this, so his message changed. If you listen to his father's old tapes, you hear about sin, repentance, and the blood of Jesus. But if you tune into Joel today, you hear about you. Joel realized that old-time religion scared people. So he changed his approach and stopped talking about hell and sin. Instead, he started preaching about victory, favor, and destiny. The message was designed to make you feel good. You walk in feeling down, you hear 30 minutes of motivational speaking set to soft piano music, and you walk out feeling like a champion. And this leads us to the most controversial thing about the Osteen brand. Joel preaches that God wants you to be wealthy and healthy and tells his millions of followers that poverty is a mindset and wealth is a blessing. But biblical scholars note that Jesus said, "Woe to you who are rich, for you have already received your comfort." But why would Joel modify the gospel? because sacrifice doesn't sell books, but telling people they deserve to be millionaires does. And ironically, despite teaching his followers how to acquire wealth, Joel is the only one who actually got rich. But he claims he isn't paid by the church, so how is he the richest pastor in America? The best-selling fortune? Well, in October 2004, Joel Osteen released a book titled Your Best Life Now, and the sales were astronomical, with the book becoming a bestseller for 200 weeks. This literary success is the primary source of his estimated $50 million to $100 million fortune, and it validates Joel's claims of not taking a salary. He actually gave up his $200,000 annual salary years ago. But if we follow the money, his no salary claim is just a facade. Because while Joel doesn't take a paycheck, the church pays millions of dollars every year to broadcast his sermons globally, indirectly marketing him. Every Sunday, millions of people tune in for service, paid for by tithes, and then go buy the book, the proceeds of which go directly to Joel. He doesn't need a salary when the church is effectively handing him a global customer base on a silver platter, but selling books was only the beginning. Once Joel realized what he could do with print alone, he decided to take his message and go mobile. So he launched a nationwide tour called the Night of Hope Tour, renting out venues like Yankee Stadium, Madison Square Garden, and Dodger Stadium. But unlike a regular crusade where you could just walk in, if you wanted to see Joel Osteen at Yankee Stadium, you had to go through Ticketmaster, and he charged about $15 a ticket. Critics argued that charging admission to hear a sermon commodified the good news and suggested that access to hope is reserved for those who can afford the entry fee. But for Joel, it was just good business. But with the kind of money flowing in from the books, the tours, and the sheer scale of the operation, the public began to speculate and people started believing any rumor they heard about his spending habits. And nothing fueled the fire quite like the story of a $300,000 sports car. You've probably seen the photo that went viral a few years ago showing a man who looks exactly like Joel Osteen cruising down the street in a silver Ferrari 458 Italia. The internet exploded. It seemed like visual proof that the pastor was spending donations frivolously, but it wasn't him. The man in the photo was actually a lookalike spotted in Switzerland. But while Joel Osteen might not have a Ferrari, he does park his cars at a $10.5 million mansion in River Oaks, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Houston. He lives in a palace with 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, 3 elevators, and a guest house, but the numbers don't add up. While the pastor sleeps in a $10 million estate, reports state that Lakewood Church spends only a small amount of its budget on actual charities. In 2017, it was reported that only 1.3% of the church's $90 million budget went to missions and outreach. The rest goes to the production of the Joel Osteen Show. But while people are focused on his spending habits, Joel Osteen and his family are even more questionable when the cameras are off. The flight attendant incident. While Joel was handling rumors about his garage, his wife, Victoria Osteen, was busy making headlines at 30,000 feet. According to court documents, in December 2005, inside the first-class cabin of a Continental Airlines flight from Houston to Vail, Colorado, Victoria became angry about a stain on her armrest and reportedly demanded that flight attendants clean it up immediately. When the flight attendant, Sharon Brown, didn't move fast enough, things allegedly turned physical. Brown accused Victoria of grabbing her by the shoulders, pushing her against the cockpit door, and elbowing her in the breast. The case went to civil court in 2008. Victoria's legal team tried to make Sharon Brown look like an opportunist looking for a payout. Victoria took the stand, weeping, claiming she would never hurt a fly, and it worked. The jury found Victoria not guilty of the assault, clearing her of civil liability. But while the civil jury let her off the hook, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, did not. The FAA fined Victoria Osteen $3,000 for interfering with a crew member. It was a small fine for a millionaire, but it was a big hit to their reputation. And if they thought a $3,000 fine was annoying, they were about to have a problem that would cost them millions. The copyright lawsuit. In 2011, a post-rock band called The American Dollar filed a massive lawsuit against Lakewood Church for taking their song, Signaling Through the Flames, and using it in their global broadcasts, DVD sales, and infomercials long after the licensing agreement had expired. The band demanded $3 million in damages, arguing that the church was using their art to sell the cotton candy gospel without permission. Lakewood fought back hard, and eventually, in 2012, a judge sided with the church, ruling that the unauthorized use was largely a misunderstanding and covered by other licenses. They won, and the church didn't have to pay the band the $3 million. But it's ironic that to win that case, Lakewood reportedly spent millions in legal fees. But while the church was busy defending itself in the courtroom, they didn't realize that someone was planning to rob them blind in their own backyard. The 2014 heist. On March 9th, 2014, after Sunday services had closed, the large offering buckets were emptied into the church safe. And then, sometime between Sunday afternoon and Monday morning, $600,000 in cash, checks, and credit card slips disappeared from the church's safe. The Houston police were called immediately. They swarmed the building looking for the usual signs of a robbery, but they found nothing. There was no forced entry, no alarms were tripped, nothing. This was an inside job. The police interviewed hundreds of employees and couldn't identify a suspect. For 7 years, that $600,000 was forgotten. People moved on, and the thief seemingly got away with it. But while the mystery of the missing money passed with time, a much darker storm was brewing in the Gulf of Mexico. The theft was embarrassing, sure, but what was coming next would shake Joel's image to its core. Hurricane Harvey. It was Hurricane Harvey, and over 4 days, 50 inches of rain covered the city, displacing thousands and leaving them desperate for shelter. Naturally, people ran to the massive 16,000-seat Lakewood Church Arena, but the doors stayed shut. While the waters rose, the church posted a short corporate statement on Facebook that would live in infamy. Lakewood Church is inaccessible due to severe flooding. But locals who lived near the arena saw that the roads around Lakewood weren't underwater and were, in fact, clear. Videos flooded Twitter and Instagram showing that the service roads leading to the church were dry. And then something happened that invalidated the church's claims all the more. While God's house was locked tight, a local furniture salesman named Jim Mattress Mac Mackingvale opened the doors of his showroom to the public and sent out his delivery trucks to rescue people from high water and let them sleep on his expensive inventory. Joel later claimed that the city didn't ask them to become a shelter. He argued that they were waiting for official designation. The internet exploded with rage. Under the pressure of massive public backlash, they finally did things differently. Days after the storm began, and only after the internet dragged them, Lakewood finally announced they were receiving refugees. They rolled out air mattresses and brought in cameras to show Joel shaking hands and praying with survivors. Then, Joel made a mistake that would give his PR team a headache and damage his reputation even more. He went on the Today Show to defend himself. He claimed they were always open, despite the Facebook post literally saying they were inaccessible. He tried to twist the story that he was protecting people from the dangerous roads, but nobody believed him. Then controversy would strike again a few years later, when a different kind of disaster struck the nation. The PPP loans. When the pandemic hit in 2020, the world shut down, and small businesses felt it the most. To keep them alive, the government launched the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. It was a lifeline meant for struggling small businesses that couldn't make payroll. But apparently, Joel Osteen felt he was struggling too, despite running a media empire with an estimated annual budget of $90 million. And despite the pastor himself having a net worth of over $50 million, Lakewood Church applied for a whopping $4.4 million in government aid. When the news broke, the backlash was intense, and Lakewood eventually returned the money. But the damage was done. While the church was busy trying to get millions from the government, they had completely forgotten about the stolen $600,000. And it would take a man with a wrench, not a Bible, to remind them of what honesty actually looks like. The plumber. We are back in the bathroom in November 2021. Justin Cawley, the plumber we met at the start, is standing over a pile of 500 envelopes stuffed with cash and checks. It's the missing $600,000 from the 2014 heist. Justin calls the maintenance supervisor and turns every single cent over to the church, single-handedly solving a 7-year-old crime and saving the church's reputation. He hoped he would be recognized and appreciated by Joel Osteen, but Joel didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, to keep their hands clean, the church issued Justin a $20,000 check through Crime Stoppers, an organization they funded. Justin Cawley later told the press, "I feel like I should have heard something. I'm just a little upset." And frankly, he should be. It was a cold response, and it was the first sign that the warm, friendly demeanor shown on stage may not have been the same behind the scenes. This bathroom discovery exposed a culture, but before Lakeview could celebrate the recovered funds, they were forced to deal with a situation they couldn't ignore. Because while money can be replaced, lives cannot. And the security that failed to stop a thief in 2014 was about to fail again, this time with consequences. The incident. On February 11th, 2024, just before a Spanish language service was scheduled to begin, a woman entered Lakewood Church in Houston accompanied by her 7-year-old son. Authorities say she was armed and began firing inside the building. Off-duty officers working security responded quickly, and the suspect was killed at the scene. Tragically, her young son was critically injured during the incident and required emergency medical treatment. The event shocked the congregation and the broader public, highlighting the unpredictable nature of violent incidents even in spaces considered safe. The incident raised serious questions about security measures at one of the largest churches in the United States. Many wondered how someone was able to enter the building with a weapon despite visible security presence. It prompted a nationwide conversation about safety protocols in large public venues, including places of worship, schools, and entertainment centers. In a public statement, Pastor Joel Osteen expressed prayers for peace and healing in the aftermath of the tragedy. He emphasized support for the victims and their families while encouraging the congregation to come together in solidarity during a difficult time. Experts note that incidents like this often reveal gaps in emergency preparedness. Security professionals stress the importance of training, rapid response plans, and clear communication to minimize risk in crowded spaces. For many, the event was a stark reminder that safety measures are never infallible, no matter the size or wealth of the institution. As Lakewood Church moves forward, the tragedy remains a sobering reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance. It also sparked wider discussions on mental health, public safety, and how communities can balance openness with protection. While the immediate response was critical in preventing further harm, the long-term questions about preparedness and responsibility continue to resonate. It's obvious that his team is trying hard to keep his reputation afloat, but things aren't looking so good for him right now, and we're waiting to see how everything plays out. Leadership, accountability, and the fallout at Lakewood Church. In the weeks following the incident, scrutiny intensified, not just on security procedures, but on leadership accountability. When a tragedy happens in a venue of that scale, especially one known worldwide, public expectation shifts quickly from sympathy to examination. People begin asking harder questions, not emotional ones, but structural ones. Lakewood Church is not a small neighborhood chapel. It is one of the largest mega churches in America, drawing tens of thousands of attendees weekly and reaching millions more through broadcast and digital platforms. With that kind of visibility comes a heightened level of responsibility. Critics have pointed out that institutions of this size typically operate with layered security protocols, risk assessments, and contingency planning that rival large entertainment arenas. That's where much of the public tension now sits. Some observers argue that the rapid response from off-duty officers likely prevented an even greater tragedy. Others question whether preventative screening could have reduced the risk altogether. These discussions are not unique to Lakewood. They reflect a broader national debate about how open public spaces, especially houses of worship, can remain welcoming while also being secure. For Pastor Joel Osteen, the situation places him in a delicate position. As the public face of the church, he represents both its spiritual message and its operational leadership, even if day-to-day security logistics are handled by teams behind the scenes. In moments like this, perception matters as much as policy. Supporters emphasize that no system is perfect and that unpredictable violence can occur anywhere. They point to the swift action that prevented further casualties. Critics, however, argue that high-profile institutions must continually adapt to evolving threats, particularly in an era where public gatherings have increasingly become targets nationwide. Beyond security concerns, there is also the emotional impact on the congregation. For many worshipers, church is meant to be a sanctuary, a space of refuge from the outside world. Incidents like this fracture that sense of safety. Rebuilding trust takes time, transparency, and visible action. In response, institutions in similar situations often conduct independent security audits, reassess emergency protocols, and communicate openly about procedural updates. Whether Lakewood will implement additional visible measures remains a key point of public interest. Ultimately, the story is no longer just about a single tragic afternoon. It has become part of a larger conversation about leadership under pressure, institutional preparedness, and how faith communities navigate modern realities. And as that conversation continues, so does the scrutiny. For now, many are watching closely, not out of sensationalism, but out of concern. How leadership responds in the aftermath of a crisis often defines public confidence far more than the crisis itself. Time will ultimately determine whether this moment becomes a turning point or a lingering question mark. Let us know what you think in the comments. Is it over for Joel Osteen, or can he still save his reputation? Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, check out the one on your screen now.